Tonight on Faith Nation, the stalemate over the shutdown. The latest on where negotiations stand on reopening the government. And withdrawing troops from Syria. How long will American service members stay on the ground there? And Campaign 2020. We break down the field of potential presidential candidates. That and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Well, we are heading into the 18th day of a government shutdown and still no end in sight. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, even as the debate over border funding, over the border wall funding, hampers the shutdown negotiations between the president and congressional Democrats, the White House is planning to send the commander-in-chief to the southern border this week. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders announcing today that President Trump will meet with those on the front lines of the national security and humanitarian crisis there. The president will also make a primetime address on the subject Tuesday. Meanwhile, talks are still underway to determine how to put an end to this partial shutdown. For more on that, we turn to Abigail Robertson on Capitol Hill. Abigail?
Well, lawmakers go back to work tomorrow, but meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of federal employees are on day 17 now of unpaid leave or going to work without seeing a paycheck. It's the longest government shutdown since 2013.
There's not going to be any bend right here.
Still unwilling to budge on his $5.5 billion funding request, the president on Friday floated a different kind of wall as a loophole to end the budget stalemate over the border.
I think we'll have to build a steel wall as opposed to a concrete wall. Whether it's a wall or some form of very powerful steel. Now, the steel is actually more expensive than the concrete. We're probably talking about steel because I really feel the other side feels better about it.
The White House acting chief of staff boils it down to one issue: semantics.
We're asking for $5.6 billion. They're offering us zero. It sounds like we're simply arguing about one variable, which is how much are we going to spend on that barrier on the southern border, on the wall, on the steel slat fence, whatever you want to call it.
The president's all-or-nothing stance has the new Speaker of the House up in arms.
The impression you get from the president that he would like to not only close government, build a wall, but also abolish Congress.
But faced with an unbending negotiator, top Democrats are leaving the door open.
We've done fencing in the past,
suggesting that border security could include a border barrier, depending on other specifics.
We've done fencing in the past. However, what is happening today, and hopefully the administration will come, the administration has not come up with any specific plan as to how they're going to spend this money.
Without a compromise in sight, the president is considering other options.
I may declare a national emergency dependent on what's going to happen over the next few days.
And he can do it.
There is a provision in law that says the president can declare an emergency. It's been done a number of times.
Although the National Emergencies Act has been on the book for more than 4 decades. But CBN News chief political analyst David Brody says the president would still need congressional buy-in.
He could technically go down that route. He would have to actually explain the statute that he's using the emergency for. Here's a bit of the rub. Congress, if they didn't want him to invoke this national emergency, would be able to overturn it, basically say, no, Mr. President, you can't do it, if you can pass a joint resolution in both the House and the Senate. That means the language has to be the same in the Democrat House and the Republican Senate, and good luck with that.
If luck isn't on the president's side, he still has options.
There is one more, and that is using $10 billion of unused funds that are set aside for the Army Corps of Engineers. The president would have to actually declare a national emergency to be able to dip into those funds.
Well, Democrats have said if the president declares a national emergency to get funding for the border wall, they will challenge that in court, and that still does not reopen the government.
Abigail, can you give us a little perspective now? I know we're getting into territory where a large number of government workers aren't going to be getting paid. I think at this point it'll be about a month without a paycheck.
Yes, and we're hearing stories of federal employees filing for unemployment or trying to pick up other jobs, but they say that's really tricky because they don't know when they will be going back to work. But they're worried about making their mortgage payments or paying their rent. We're hearing that federal employees are putting a lot of stuff on credit cards, but they're concerned about that because if their paychecks don't come when those credit card bills are due, then they're stuck with those interest fees. And things are getting really bad. And then there's those low-income workers, the people, the janitor staff or the food service workers who are technically contract employees, so they don't even qualify for the back pay once the government reopens. So now they've been 17 days without a job during the Christmas holiday season. So that's really tough. I spoke with someone at NASA who said thankfully her husband has a job as well, but she knows multiple coworkers who are married and they both are forced to stay home right now. They have children. It's a really hard time of the year to be missing these paychecks. So people, these federal employees are definitely feeling this and really struggling, and I think very concerned about the uncertainty of when the government might reopen.
Hard times, definitely. Thank you, Abigail, for that report. Well, joining us now is someone who will ultimately weigh in on the debate with a vote, and that is Indiana Senator Mike Braun. Senator Braun, thank you for being here on Faith Nation
today. Good to be
here. First question for you. What's the latest that you're hearing in the Senate about the negotiations to end the shutdown?
I think it's pretty clear that the leader said until Schumer and Pelosi work out something with the president that he's probably not going to push anything. And it was pretty clear on that from the get-go. It's interesting, after being sworn in last Thursday, you're thrown into this dynamic. Must say it was one of the frustrating things watching government from Indiana as an entrepreneur and legislator, and now I'm in the middle of it. So.
Well, Democrats passed a spending bill last week, and one of the things that they claimed was it was a measure that Republicans supported before the shutdown, but the measure also included repealing protections for abortions, and that's something that is a non-starter, I know, for you and many other conservatives.
It would be. Of course, I ran on a completely pro-life platform and was endorsed by Susan B. Anthony, Indiana Right to Life, National Right to Life, and it's a cause dear to me. And I think you're seeing now that they are in power, that's one of their first things that they're out there promoting. Of course, it's not going to get through the Senate. It's not going to, President Trump obviously wouldn't be for anything like that. But when you're showcasing that, I think that tells you where your priorities are, and it's sad that that was part of it.
The President and the White House are now openly talking about declaring a national emergency to build the border wall. Is that a measure, or is that a move that you would support?
You know, I think that in Indiana, at least, border security and immigration and all the problems associated with it would have been up there throughout the campaign, primary and general, and got really focused upon in the general because my opponent, leaned the other direction. Said he'd in some things, but then changed his mind, for political reasons. But I think we're now at the time where there's been a lot of discussion. As recently as 2 years ago, Schumer, Pelosi, and most Democrats were for building a wall, and I think the figure was more like $25 billion. Now, I think they calculate it politically, and I'm not sure they want to do anything for border security. So I think the president will do what he needs to do to make good on a campaign promise, and that's to secure the border where needed with a wall. And he wants mostly, though, to see the Democrats come up with anything that shows they're serious about border security when it appears they're not.
Drilling down, though, if he did declare a national emergency, is that something that you would support?
If he declared a national emergency and thought it needed to be done in that fashion, most of us would be for it because it looks like the other side is doing everything it can to do nothing.
What do you say to the 800,000 federal employees and some of those, not to mention the contractors who aren't eligible to get back pay? What do you say to them as Abigail just reported, many of them will go about a month without a paycheck?
I mean, one of the things that was frustrating being back home watching government function this way would have been for that very reason. Families do depend on their jobs in the federal government. And even if you're for reducing the size of the federal government, like I am, to make it more efficient, live within its means like we did in Indiana, people are involved. And I'm hoping that this is going to be the showdown that then sets the stage for a more rational budget process. I'm on the budget committee, and you're going to see that I'm going to roll out a bill that's been there for a while, but I think it's going to have more currency now more than ever. No budget, no pay. And that means if we can't collectively, as senators and congressmen and women, get a budget done, I don't think we deserve to get a paycheck either. Get a little bit of that medicine. Federal employees are getting it now. So it's no way to run anything. You wouldn't get by with that on a school board, a state legislature, a business. It's laughable.
Senator Braun, we only have about a minute left. You've been in the Senate for less than a week, just sworn in on Thursday. I know that you ran on a campaign to drain the swamp, but getting here, being greeted by a government shutdown, does that show you just how difficult it will be to drain the swamp?
I think it shows how dysfunctional the system has become. I'm hoping that there are going to be more people like me that come from the world of getting things done, living within your means. We'll double basically the business caucus with Senator Romney, Scott, and myself coming in. Maybe someday we'll get 8, 10 to 12 of us, and it'll change the dynamic. People are going to need to stick their neck out, get out of the comfort zone, and run. If we keep sending the same kind of career politicians here that have never done things like making budgets and meeting payrolls, I'd expect more of the same. I hope that dynamic changes.
Indiana Senator Mike Braun, thank you so much. We wish you the best. Welcome to Washington.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, after his shocking announcement to withdraw troops from Syria, is the president changing course on the withdrawal? Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, announced new conditions on the president's call for an immediate pullout. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn for more. Ben?
Well, John, President Trump said we will still pull out of Syria, but on a different timetable, which is more coordinated with U.S. allies. As you were talking about, National Security Advisor John Bolton released new conditions before American troops pull out. One, that ISIS is defeated in Syria. Second, that the country's Kurdish allies who have been fighting alongside U.S. troops are protected. And three, that Iranian forces leave Syria. If not, American boots will remain on the ground.
And to make sure that the defense of Israel and our other friends in the region is absolutely assured, and to take care of those who have fought with us against ISIS and other terrorist groups.
Now, Trump tweeted today that we will be leaving at a proper pace while at the same time continuing to fight ISIS and doing all else that is prudent and necessary. Now, this contradicts the president's original announcement saying that American troops would be coming home immediately. I just spoke with Dave Abisnick with Foundation for Defense Democracies on the challenge facing the U.S. to withdraw troops from Syria.
Part of it is the overall strategic challenge that they have been playing a very important role in completing the defeat of the Islamic State, which is still active, which according to Pentagon estimates still has tens of thousands of fighters that are affiliated with it. They're still inflicting a lot of casualties on our Kurdish partners in Syria. So we would be moving out while there is still ongoing fighting. And the question is, what would we be leaving behind to help take care of the continuing Islamic State threat?
Bottom line is American troops could remain in Syria for months, even years. Today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is headed to the region to reassure Arab allies amid confusion over the administration's policy in the Middle East. John?
Ben, we know Israel is a major ally of the United States in the Middle East. So how is Israel reacting to the new conditions?
Yeah, John, that's a good question. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is no doubt relieved that the 2,000 U.S. troops are not leaving Syria. Well, at least not right away. The announcement created concern in Israel and fear among the U.S. allies, the Kurds. But again, Bolton reassured Netanyahu that America will take care of its friends. That is the latest from the North Lawn here at the White House. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Gary Lane, senior international reporter and host of the CBN News Channel show The Global Lane, joins us now for more. Gary, do you see the pullout of U.S. troops from Syria as a potential way to empower ISIS in Syria?
I really don't think it will empower ISIS, because ISIS only controls a small swath of land in the eastern central part of Syria towards the Iraqi border and the Euphrates River. Who it may empower is Iran. And Iran's security chief recently said the U.S. has been defeated in Syria. That's what this troop withdrawal shows. So Iran may be empowered. That would be the bigger concern. But also, everyone is jockeying for position in Syria at this time because the war is winding down. ISIS has pretty much been defeated, so have other militant groups. And you see the Kurds and Turkey jockeying for position and territory. Also, the Assad regime and Russia and Iran. That's what's happening right now. That's why this is of grave concern.
And what about Turkey? What role does Turkey play in all of this?
Well, the Kurds will tell you that the Turks were involved in supporting ISIS. They allowed ISIS to go back and forth over their border from Syria into Turkey and back into Syria with arms, weapons, other things. So the Turks have a long history of supporting Sunni militants in Syria. They wanted to see Assad defeated. They also wanted to see Iran defeated. And I think that is why we're seeing the United States now move towards Turkey to see them as a counterpoint to counter, of course, the Iranian influence in Syria.
And how does this affect Christians in Syria?
Well, the Kurdish militias have been the ones who have been protecting the Christians. The Christians are very concerned about this troop pullout, as are the Kurds. And John Bolton made a statement today basically saying, look, that's the National Security Advisor, by the way. He said, look, the Kurds know who their friends are. Well, the Kurds are wondering, are you a reliable ally, United States, if you withdraw these troops and the training that we've received, that buffer, that help that we've received over time in the last couple of years? Where are we going to be? And where are the Christians going to be? So it calls that into question. Bolton will be meeting with the Turks tomorrow, as will the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and they'll be discussing Syria. They want to make sure the Kurds are protected, that the Turks, if they make any military incursion into northern Syria, that the Kurds are not going to be harmed.
Well, thank you, Gary. And for more from Gary, you can catch his show, The Global Lane, every Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. on the CBN News Channel. The expanding pack of presidential hopefuls. We break down the potential contenders when we come back. Welcome back. Well, for the first time in more than 25 years on the Supreme Court, Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg missed the court's first day of arguments. Ginsburg, who is recovering from cancer surgery from last December, wasn't able to attend hearings today, but Chief Justice John Roberts says she will still participate by reading transcripts from the court's caseload. Today marked the first day of oral arguments in the 2019 session. Well, Democrats are already talking 2020. One major player announced she formed an exploratory committee for a White House run the day before New Year's. With Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren signaling an almost certain bid, it looks to be a crowded field. CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody joins us now to sift through what's likely to be a deluge of candidates entering the fray, trying to fight against President Trump. David, let's start with Senator Warren. Is she jumping the gun here? Any momentum by her announcing her exploratory committee this soon?
You know, John, I don't think she's jumping the gun at all. There are going to be a lot of candidates and a lot of progressives, so why not be the first one out of the gate? And that's exactly what she's doing here. She's got a tough road ahead, though. Look, she is relatively establishment. A lot of folks are going to be reminded of Hillary Clinton. And she isn't the most, how do we say this? And these are her critics, but the most cuddly person in the world. In other words, she's got a bit of an issue when it comes to turning on the charm, and she's taken some hits on that Instagram video she put up the other day where it looked a bit stiff. So she'll have her challenges.
Now, Warren's getting in early, but this is just the beginning. I would imagine this is a precursor to what we can expect.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going to have so many different candidates running. I mean, it's going to probably be close to 20 or so. It may be even more than that. I mean, I can't even imagine that. So take a look at what we're talking about here. Now, first of all, in the Northeast, you've got, there he is, Uncle Bernie, as they called him in 2016. He'll be back in 2020. I don't think there's any question. And, of course, Elizabeth Warren. That's the Northeast. And, by the way, as we stick on the Northeast for a moment, remember, John Kerry, Massachusetts. He was the Democrat nominee back in the day. Michael Dukakis, another Democrat nominee from Massachusetts. And there's Elizabeth Warren. So that's kind of like the establishment area of the country. Let's go on. After the Northeast, we're going to head to basically the Rust Belt. And in the Rust Belt, we've got Joe Biden. We've heard about him. I believe he was vice president, John, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to Google it. He was. And Sherrod Brown, both, once again, Biden from Delaware, taking the Amtrak train, blue-collar guy, will get in the gutter with Trump if he decides to run. And Sherrod Brown, once again, kind of a gravelly voice, blue-collar progressive who's kind of remaking himself in the image of one of those those sensible blue-collar Democrats.
Yeah, I just want to clarify there that you weren't showing running mates. You're just showing people from different regions. Well, let's talk about, as you mentioned, former Vice President Joe Biden. There were a lot of calls for Uncle Joe to jump into the race back in 2016 and save the day. What's different now, and what about his age being a factor?
Yeah, I mean, obviously age will play into it. He's 76 years old, and the question is, do Democrats, do progressives especially, want to go for the white guy in his late 70s? I mean, Donald Trump is the white guy in his early 70s, and, you know, they're thinking that's not working out too well. But beyond that, Joe Biden, more establishment in the Democrat field, if you will. They'll call him moderate. I think a lot of conservatives would question how moderate Joe Biden is. But the point is that I think the question is there a room for appetite for someone that's kind of had his time around, and where is the energy here with the Democrats? And I think you're looking at electability. Obviously, Joe Biden's got that. And then there are a lot of other factors as well. And so I think when it comes to electability, Joe Biden could be on paper at least the person that could beat Donald Trump.
David, you just mentioned energy among Democrats. Someone who had a lot of energy among Democrats back in 2016 was Bernie Sanders. He had so much momentum that go around, but ended up conceding to Hillary Clinton. Do you think there's room for him this go around? What may be different for him this time?
A lot's different this time around. Number one, and maybe first and foremost, and this is game, set, match for Bernie, a lot more progressives in the race this time. Kamala Harris in California. We've talked about Elizabeth Warren. I mean, you can just go down the line. There are going to be Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, I can just go on and on. Before, Bernie was taking up all that progressive space. Now, and he was a trendsetter in 2016, but now they're all kind of piling on the Bernie train, and now everybody's Bernie to a certain degree, and that makes it much more difficult for him.
CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody, thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks, John.
Coming up, why one college football star says his faith is more important than the sport. Well, tonight, the #1 ranked University of Alabama will take on the Clemson Tigers for college football's national championship. It's the second year in a row Clemson has competed for the title. This year, the team's led by 19-year-old quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Even though he's one of the most celebrated stars in college football, right now, Lawrence says it's not the game that defines him.
Football's important to me, obviously, but it's not my life. It's not like the biggest thing in my life, I would say. My faith is. So that just comes from kind of knowing who I am outside of that. So putting my identity in, you know, what Christ says, who he thinks I am, and who I know that he says I am. So really, like I said, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what people think about me or how good they think I play.
Though he now leads the team at the beginning of the season, Lawrence wasn't even a starter. What a remarkable season for him. And for more news on faith and culture, tune into Faith Wire. It airs every Monday night at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. For more information how to watch the program, go to cbnnewschannel.com. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation. We'll see you back here tomorrow.